Mhm. How's John, Doris?
Good.
Good. Glad to hear it.
And
How are
Helen?
you?
Doing okay.
We
Had some
are
issues.
now live on YouTube. So, Madam Chair, I'm
We'll
going to turn.
talk tomorrow, Dean.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Stephanie Simone Mahaney. I'm the Chair of the Zoning and Land Use Committee. It is May 2nd, and this is a hybrid meeting. Tonight, we will be reviewing a private rezoning application for 250 86th Street. And the attorney for the applicant is Richard Lobel, who is here in the district office. And Richard, if you would like to introduce your team, please, and then take it from here.
Sure, thank you, Chair. Good evening, Richard Lobel of Sheldon Lobel PC. I'm joined by Ken Kozelman, who is the project architect, as well as Christina Sapansky, who is from GPA Environmental. They are both on the applicant team. We will also be joined momentarily by Dr. Helen Kim, who is the applicant and the owner of the site at 250 86th Street.
Thank you. Would you like to just begin the presentation? And
Sure.
I know you have one.
Okay, I'm trying to
Right.
zoom in a little bit more on you. Give me a moment. I'm going to share the screen.
Great. Great. So there we go. Right. You good, Josephine?
I think I'm sorry that
No,
that
okay.
better. Yeah, that's better.
That's fine. So good evening. Once again, Richard Lobel. The reason that I'm here today is to discuss a potential rezoning of 250 86th Street. The next slide is a project description. So the site here, 250 86th Street, currently has a basement and two-story building. And the short of it is, under the proposed rezoning, it would remain the same. The applicant here, Dr. Kim, essentially purchased the property about 12 years ago to locate her ENT practice here. Upon performing renovations on the building, despite being advised by real estate professionals, it became apparent that to locate her medical practice on the ground floor, while the use was permitted, would require that she destroy most of the ground floor because of yards, as well as reduce the size to a half a floor. So this put her in some financial distress and basically has prevented her from using the building for the last 6 or 7 years. So the reason we're here is because upon consultation with city planning, it was determined that our rezoning to R6B would allow the building to remain the same, with the exception of being allowed to now convert the basement and the ground floor to allow for her medical practice. And I believe I'm joined by Dr. Kim. Hi. You can sit here. Dr. Kim, often on her way from a medical emergency, so I'm not surprised.
This is early for us.
Yes,
Okay.
it is.
Sorry,
So,
everybody.
Sorry.
that's okay. Do you want to just introduce yourself?
Oh, so I'm Dr. Kim. I have a private practice in ear, nose, and throat, head, neck surgery in Staten Island, and I've started a practice here over 10 years. Yep.
And I'm Charlie, her husband.
Okay.
And I work in the office with my wife.
So pursuant to this rezoning, as you can see from the description, Dr. Kim's site is at 256th Street, and the rezoning would basically go from an existing R6B that's located along 3rd Avenue, and we'll go over the maps in a moment, and stretch that to encompass Dr. Kim's lot, in addition to 8 other individual lots, and we'll talk about that as well. So this would essentially allow Dr. Kim to locate her medical office on the ground floor and basement of this building. And again, she has currently had to relocate to Staten Island. And indeed, many of her clients, her existing patients, are here in Brooklyn, but need to go to Staten Island in order to get treatment. So this would be, a long way to addressing this hardship. The next slide is the zoning map. And you can see the site located in the circled area. It is currently within the Bay Ridge Special District, as well as within an existing R32. As we'll note in a couple of maps, the area map, you'll see that there's an existing R6B along 3rd Avenue. And as per city planning, that would be stretched in order to cover the property. And we'll talk about why despite, the Dr. Kim's use of the property, it's an appropriate zoning district regardless. The next slide should be a tax map, which shows both the site itself highlighted in red, as well as the rezoning area. The rezoning area includes other lots, and why is that? So the first thing is that we include other lots so that we don't get charged with spot zoning. Spot zoning is essentially just rezoning of, let's say, one lot or lots which don't have context with the surrounding area. So here, as Dr. Kim's lot is roughly 5 lots into the block, you wouldn't just rezone her lot. When we looked at this with city planning came to the conclusion that the surrounding lots would be brought into compliance with an R6B rezoning. So all of these lots except for one are already at a floor area ratio of greater than 1, which is the maximum that would be permitted pursuant to the existing zoning. So the rezoning here would not merely benefit Dr. Kim in allowing her to locate her medical practice here, but would also bring roughly 7 of these lots into compliance, which would be a nice thing for those homeowners. Right now, those are all existing non-complying buildings, whereas they would now become compliant. The next slide.
Can I just ask one question?
We have to continue with our presentation.
Sure. The next slide is the area map, which we think well illustrates why this is appropriate, again, regardless of Dr. Kim and the hardship that she's undergone. This is a lot along 86th Street, which at 100 feet wide is an extra wide street. I would note that in other areas of Brooklyn, when we come in for rezonings of this nature, on extra wide streets, typically rezonings are granted in excess of R8A or R9, even R9A bulk. And that bulk is at floor area ratios of greater than 7.2. So on a similar lot here, you'd have a 14,000 square foot building that would be merited by a street width of that. That's not what this rezoning is about. This rezoning is basically about taking an existing 3,000 square foot building and keeping it at 3,000 square feet. Similarly, for the properties that are located to the east of us, you see like a blue lot, which is the Salvation Army building. Those properties to the east of us are already built above a 2.2 FAR. They're 2.4 and 2.5. Which means that they get no benefit really as far as additional square footage from the rezoning. For the properties to the west of us, those properties are anywhere from over a 1 to a 1.3, 1.4. Similarly, there'd be no reason to redevelop. Christina Sapansky, who's on the phone with us from GZA, can talk about that. They're not considered soft sites. Basically, redevelopment of sites with mandatory inclusionary housing, which is being mapped here as well, would require a percentage to be devoted to affordable housing. Essentially, if you can't build enough of additional building space, the city looks at it and says that they will likely remain as is, which is the case here. They really would not be getting much in terms of additional square footage. In addition,
I don't have a question right now, but I would just ask you to return to the plot plan slide for 1 second, please. Okay, that's the one.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sure. So we're just gonna run through the rest. I think we would just take a look right now at the photos of the site. You can see from the photographs, most of these buildings 2 to 3 stories, which would remain under the existing zoning, particularly on our site, which is already built to an FAR of roughly 1.5. So the additional development rights that would be given pursuant to this rezoning, again, not enough really to cause you to redevelop a building, but enough to legalize, in this case, ground floor use as a medical office, as well as yards, which would otherwise need to be 8 feet and would cut into an existing building, which is only at 20 feet wide. So you can see how it makes it infeasible under the current zoning. I think if we want to just go, Josephine, through the photos and end up at the plans, I guess, Ken, do you want to just kind of like talk briefly about the architectural aspects here and what we would now be able to do were the rezoning achieved? I'm assuming Ken is
He was.
unmuting.
He was there.
There it is.
Sorry about that. I'm here. Okay, sorry. So basically, we would have an opportunity to have higher density, with a higher zoning. So, are you asking me, Richard, what would be required?
Just what would be allowed at the building under, as opposed to what you can do now under the R32?
I mean, Dr. Kim wants to keep it as it is. I've been working with her since what, 2016? So it's been a while, and she deserves to be in that building with her office. And so we're step by step by step. So essentially the shell will remain as it is. There are a few modifications we'd have to make on the inside, maybe some clearances. Probably the biggest project would be putting in sprinklers for the building throughout, just for fire suppression, and also handicapped accessibility for those that, people that are in a wheelchair. So we're exploring different options.
So I guess in summary, I guess there's two things we would close with. The first thing is just from a land use perspective, whether or not an R6B would be appropriate. It's probably more appropriate here than the existing R32. You can see that because you've got a bunch of buildings which are already non-complying with the existing zoning district. So the R6B would essentially allow those to become complying buildings, allow those building owners to basically have buildings which complied with square footage requirements of the zoning. And the second thing, of course, is the lack of any development that would be engendered by this rezoning. Again, Dr. Kim first came to us in 2019, which now we're in for over 5 years, and has been forced to be located in Staten Island when her desire really is to allow for her practice to flourish on 86th Street. So from a rezoning standpoint, on wide streets and 100-foot wide streets, city planning comes in on a regular basis and asks for a minimum 8 to 9 story buildings, R6A, R9A. Not our interest here. We basically have a 3-story building which would remain here as is. And I think with that, the entire applicant team is happy to answer questions.
Before we go into any discussion or questions, can you just speak to the mandatory inclusionary housing provision? Is
Sure.
that automatically implemented because of the rezoning?
Correct.
Okay.
So so there's a text amendment that goes along with any rezoning. Any rezoning basically needs to contemplate mandatory inclusionary housing. What does that mean? It means that the city basically puts overlay on that district so that to the extent that anyone was going to redevelop, they would now be required to do so with 25 to 30% generally affordable units. So basically the city won't allow you to rezone to an R6B here, absent a mandatory inclusionary housing rezoning. I will tell you that there are minimums that would be applied, and so if you're not creating more than 12,500 square feet or greater than 10 units, you would be accepted from MIH requirements. So on these lots, you wouldn't really even be generating affordability. But the bottom line is the square footages here are all within the R6B that would potentially be approved. So the buildings themselves would become legal complying buildings, but it's unlikely that there would ever be any redevelopment pursuant to that.
Thank you.
Sure.
For that clarification. Committee, do you have, Anne, your hand is up already? If you would like to ask, go ahead, please.
Yeah, why is this not a board case addressing Dr. Kim's site only?
Sure.
Going
So-
beyond that causes us to really be concerned about the change.
Sure, understood. And thank you for the question, Ann. So BSA, when we oftentimes go to BSA, we've been before Community Board 10 before on BSA cases. What do we have to demonstrate at BSA? The 3 threshold findings as well as the 2 minor findings. A, B, and C, site uniqueness, financial hardship, and character. And here you would never be able to make your findings at BSA. The first thing is that there's nothing about the lot itself that is unique. It's a small lot. There's other small lots in the area, but it's in and of itself. It doesn't merit anything from for which would warrant BSA to go in and to grant this specific lot relief. Moreover, there are D and E findings with regards to self-created hardship as well as minimum variance necessary. And the fact is that we've got a building here which we thought we could use for something, and then as it turns out, we can't use it for that use. So the bottom line is we wouldn't be able to make our findings here. While it is well within the character pursuant to the other properties around us, there's nothing particularly unique here, which is why, we came for rezoning. It's always easier for us to go to BSA because it's a shorter application process. It's a less expensive application process. But here, there's just no opportunity for relief from BSA.
Thank you. for the
Thank
explanation.
you.
Doris, you have your hand up?
Yes, I'm confused. What is the nature of Dr. Kim's practice that she cannot have it in an existing building where many other providers do it with no problem?
Sure. So the problem here is that this building was an existing legal, non-complying residential building. It's a long-standing building at the site. When you put community facility in and you attempt to change the certificate of occupancy to allow for that community facility use, two things happen. Number one is in mixed buildings like this in an R32 district, you're limited to 0.2 FAR for your community facility use, which would be 400 square feet. And the floors here are roughly 1,500 square feet. So she would be able to have maybe a quarter of the ground floor and that's it. The second important thing is that community facility uses, unlike residential uses here, require 8-foot side yards. With a 20-foot wide building, the imposition of even one 8-foot side yard would narrow the site to 12 feet wide and would not provide a reasonable floor plate for a medical practice. Many of the medical practices here are one of two kinds. Number one, they're grandfathered and have been here since 1961 or prior, so they're able to remain in the site. The second thing is that they're illegal and they're violative of law. And if DOB came in and cited them, they would have violations and would have to go through a similar process. So Dr. Kim here is, indeed in doing this and in not being able to occupy the site for the last 6 years or greater, is attempting to come in, do the right thing and try to kosher this through zoning.
Thank you.
Sure.
I was curious about the Salvation Army, the building next to it. That's a through lot?
Yes.
Would the rezoning affect the lot that's on the 87th Street?
It wouldn't.
It would not, so only half the building.
Correct.
So this is, of course, a great concern to us because you're not talking about just a single site,
Of course.
but really that's that whole block. And to have this just a one application to redo the zoning on the whole block is really significant. And we do anticipate that there is great potential for development, even though you say there would not be. And therefore, this one application would really undermine the Special Bay Ridge District parameters because it would go from the R32 where it's up to an R5 where at least the height is capped at 32 feet, if I'm correct. This would then open up really Pandora's box for the rest of the block. And that is of tremendous concern for us.
Sure.
Josephine, do you want to?
Yeah, I'm trying to,
I'm trying to look for.
I'm trying to share this screen.
Sure.
A problem, so give me one moment. Screen. I don't know why that's happening. I'll have to do it this way. Okay. So here's a photo of the area that's going to be rezoned. And some of the questions that we had really pertaining to some of the larger lots, the Salvation Army lot
Sure.
and the building next door, which is this white freestanding building also owned by the Salvation Army. And the zoning changes that's done forever, right? So potentially we're looking not only at the current application, but its impact both today and in the future within the Special Bay Ridge District. Richard, on the zoning application portal, I don't know why this is, but we included this just to mention to you. It includes the entire T.
Yes.
Yeah. That's it. That's incorrect.
Yeah.
They got it wrong.
So we were.
Yeah, you can
concerned
take a
about
look
that.
at the map that's included with our materials has the
Right.
correct map.
No, we did see
We
that.
just wanted to double.
Yeah, no, of course.
So in the Special Bay Ridge District ZR 114 the zoning resolution section 114-122, The height and setback and maximum building height regulations of the underlying districts have been modified as follows: community facilities and residence districts. In the R3A, R3X, R32, R4A, R41, R4B, and R5B districts, the maximum height of a building or other structure containing community facility uses shall not exceed 32 feet. And during the planning of the Special Bay Ridge District, that was an important part of maintaining the built environment, of maintaining the streetscapes, specifically as it relates to community facilities, which have typically broader and higher height allowances. So that's very specific to the Special Bay Ridge District. So there was some concern that the two buildings, those two lots, which are currently, owned by
Sure.
Salvation Army and have potential community use in the R6B would not be protected in terms of height. There are also in the EAS, there were questions about the FAR. And it seemed like the FAR was greater under current zoning, under with Action 2.20, and certainly for the future with zoning for equality. No, it's zoning for housing opportunity.
Right.
Yes, housing opportunity, ZQA, it's all these different acronyms. And have you looked at that, potentially what those changes and how they would impact your client today? And would you have considered other districts that fell within the protection of community facility in the Special Bay Ridge District?
Yeah, it's a good question. The R6B was the minimum district that allowed us to both get the necessary FAR for community facility and to waive the 8-foot yard requirement. So that's really kind of where we ended up. I will note that to the conversation around the zoning district and the choice of zoning district is one which we make with city planning. To the extent that the community board has feelings around other lots included in the zoning district, that is the community board's prerogative to basically include that in their materials. And as this goes through ULURP, there can be consideration down the road from the various agencies, such as the borough president, city planning, and the council, who will then weigh in on the nature of the district and the application to those lots.
Right. 'Cause
So-
it's my understanding under housing opportunity that yards are going to be waived, basically.
Right.
So that requirement will no longer be there. I don't think it's controversial. We haven't heard that kind of feedback yet. And I don't know if it's going to pass or not pass, but certainly it's part of the upcoming proposal.
Right. Yeah, understood. And again, we're in a little bit of a position where we don't know exactly what's going to be approved. Obviously, it needs to go through ULURP, and it's likely going to be chopped at some point. But even with the yard relief, we do end up with this FAR limitation, which doesn't really, isn't really waived by housing opportunity, which is the 0.2 FAR limitation on the community facilities. That would require in a building of this nature that we maintain only 400 square feet.
In the R32.
Correct.
But what about the R5?
The R5, I can go back and take a look at that. We're happy to take a look at that.
Okay. Stephanie, there are some questions from the public.
Oh, great.
Nick Cafagno. Nick, I am going to you should be able to join as a panelist and ask your question. Hi, Nick, you should be able to unmute now. I see you on our screen.
Hi, good evening, everybody. How you doing?
Good.
I can start my video also. Hi, pleasure to see everybody. Thank you for inviting me into the conversation. Yes, I do have some concerns about this specific request. It seems that being in the business of code and zoning consulting and expediting and all this, we seem to have it looks like there's some sort of, I think they're asking for a little too much. All right, we'll keep it simple. This complete rezoning of 8 properties or 8 to 10 properties, whatever it may be, concerns me because it allows for construction of an entirely different concept of what 86th Street currently is. So I agree with everybody's concern of expanding this. If it's specific to one property, I would be more, I'd be more lenient to it, but still have a question of, you know, what are the ultimate, what are the ultimate expectations in the future? And that's what I think we should be looking at as Bay Ridge residents is, you know, what can happen if this happens? So it's just, it could be a trickle down effect, and that's, you know, it's very easy to not even respond to this. Not many people are here, and that's concerning also. So I think that anybody here who is a Bay Ridge resident for a long time and is concerned about things changing in the future, this is a big conversation to be had.
Josephine, would you be able to put up the area map? I thank you for the comment, Nick. I just wanted to make sure that everyone knows what the floor area ratios are for these existing buildings. And then Christina, I mean, you can probably talk a minute about soft sites, but which is something that goes in the environmental statement. But we're going to go to the colored map, that one. So, and is there a way to enlarge it? So you can see in the dotted area that there are, the site in red is Dr. Kim's site, and between 3rd Avenue and Dr. Kim's site are 5 lots. Stephanie's already discussed the Salvation Army lots, and you know that's a separate issue. We understand. I just want to talk for a second about each of those lots that's adjacent to 3rd Avenue. Those 3 lots are all developed to a floor area ratio of 2.58. The maximum floor area ratio that's permitted in accordance with an R6B district is 2.2. So those lots will literally have no additional square footage available to them pursuant to this rezoning. They're overbuilt even in an R6B. You then have the 2 Salvation Army lots, and then there's Dr. Kim's lot, which is the subject of the application. We included the remainder of those lots along 86th Street. Basically, upon discussion with city planning, the floor area ratios of those lots are all over a 1, so they're all greater than would be permitted in the R32. They range from a 1.02 to a 1.54. So just to be clear in terms of additional development, and Christina, I guess if you want to talk for a minute about likely redevelopment, if you have a building that's built to, for example, 3,000 square feet or 3,500 square feet, and the rezoning would allow you to go to 4,000 square feet, then, you know, as you can imagine from common sense, there's not a lot of incentive to redevelop, and there's certainly no opportunity to redevelop with additional height. Christina, I mean, is that kind of accurate in terms of the soft site analysis?
I'm sorry, Richard, you cut out. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay. No, we were just talking about the soft site analysis and what the city deems would be likely to redevelop under a soft site analysis. It seems that, for example, we talked about the 3 lots that are built over 2.2, obviously no incentive to redevelop, and these other lots that are built between a 1 and a 1.5.
Right. So typically, the city considers a lot size of 5,000 square feet or more to be a soft site because all of these lots are smaller than that, and they are all under different site ownership. that it would be unlikely that those lots would be developed as a result of this rezoning.
But could additions be made to the?
So yeah, I think the ultimate concern is if these are all bought out by one developer and reconfigured into one main development, I guess is what my biggest concern is, which
They would have to be under one developer, they would all have to be knocked down, and then there would have to be redevelopment to allow for a building which would have market rate floor area 1.5. So they could go to a 2.2 FAR, but 25% of that would be affordable. So, you know, as someone who's kind of involved in a lot of rezonings, there's not enough there for someone to say, okay, we're going to take a site which already generates a 1 FAR for residential, is built to over 1 residential, knock that down and put up a building that's going to generate 1.5. It's just like the economics aren't there. I understand the concern, and I understand, you know, why going down the block is something that the community board is sensitive about. Again, I would invite the community board to enter that into their resolution. This is, again, something oftentimes where we will get to the council and, you know, as a matter of public record, we've had applications where we've had 8 lots included in rezoning and been reduced to 1. That was most famously in the South Portland Avenue rezoning. We had 1 applicant with 1 lot. City planning, through city planning, we expanded it to 8 lots. It was reduced to 1 lot, and that was found to be okay. It survived legal challenge even. So again, we hear you. We understand the sensitivity. We do here have an applicant who has been really going through it for some time now, has existing patients in this area who travel to see her, and we're really hoping that we can come to a solution with the community board that would allow her to remain here.
Thank you. Dean?
Yeah, from what I've heard, and for myself, there's no possibility of my supporting this application. The applicant has had the opportunity over many years, if this site did not work, to sell the site, purchase one that will work, but rather has held the site for numerous years and now is coming with other lots seeking a rezoning. You know, we fought very hard for the Special Bay Ridge District, and it's very easy to lose things, you know, the unintended consequences, which we've run across many, many times, or the unforeseen things that come up. So I think that the applicant put herself in this position. She should have many years ago gotten rid of this piece of property, bought something that was more appropriate, and because she could have moved on. But rather now is coming with a large chunk, basically a spot zone, and looking for us to support it, which I cannot.
Do you want to?
Well, my intention is definitely not to, you know, take away from the community, but to add to it. And, you know, through my experience of trying to build up a practice in Bay Ridge, I've really enjoyed my interaction with the local community members here. And yeah, I was unfortunately misguided initially. And before I knew it, there was a lot of money invested into the building and into the renovations. And it was extremely, you know, at the end of the day, difficult to walk away from. And you know, to this day, I've been trying to be compliant and go through all the pathways that might have resolved some of the issues that were a wall to my having a medical practice there, to the extent that I had wanted. But in the final analysis, I thought this was the best route, and unfortunately, it's just taken all these years to do it.
Dean, we purchased that building in 2011, and at that point, we had a path to get what we wanted. Hurricane Sandy hit, the building department just became unbelievably swamped. That set us back so much, and the zoning's changed. So Dr. Abraham, the optometrist 2 or 3 doors down, he was actually building his well, we purchased ours and we spoke with him, and everything was going well with him, and we made calls to his architect, and then we went searching for an architect, and by the time things had changed, and I can't tell you specifically what they are, but
And so,
the side yard and
Yep. And so we ended up firing the first architect. We have a whole brand new team now, and yeah, we had to endure a lot to try to get a practice here. We do love Bay Ridge. We don't want to change certainly the front, the brownstone appearance of the building at all. It was one of the things that attracted me to it. So
Thank you both for your input.
Pardon me, when did the zoning change that you mentioned? The zoning changed over Sandy? When?
no, I didn't say it changed over Sandy. I said at some point.
When did the zone, in 1961, the zoning was set there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
think
when was that change of zoning?
I think it was a community facility text amendment, but we can.
Yeah, I don't specifically know what I'm talking about with the zoning exactly, but I know, again, the optometrist a couple doors down.
So it's been R3 2 when you purchased the building, right?
Yeah, no, it's
Okay,
been R13
okay.
since
So
1961.
you
Yes.
knew it was R3 2 when you purchased the building.
We have more questions from the committee or
We'll go
Yeah,
finish
the only thing I would,
public. So if you be patient, we're gonna get to everyone. I'm sorry. Dean and then Ann?
the only thing I would say, not quite in response, everybody that comes before the board has a special problem that they're trying to address, however you want to put it. And if everybody that came before us was approved, I mean, the having the zoning really doesn't have any effect. So I understand what you're saying, but there were other avenues that the applicant could have taken years ago to relieve herself from being in this position today. And I don't say that in a nasty way. Believe me, I don't. You're a professional, you're helping people, and I completely respect you for that. But we're talking about zoning here, and I cannot, go along with it. I'm sorry.
Ann?
Yeah, I agree wholeheartedly with Dean. And the reason for my first question about the Board of Standards and Appeals case was because I think we do feel for the doctor's individual needs. But for those needs to multiply to more than half of the block, and put the scale of those, if this happens, there will be a large scale project going on here. And even if the height is modest enough, the rhythm and the street face will be completely changed. And enough said.
I'm gonna go to the public. Okay, so Tom McCarthy, you have a question, Tom? You'll be able to unmute and join the meeting room. And then next we'll go to Jeff Daly, but Tom, you're up next.
Yes, hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great, thank you very much. Yes, seems to me that this is a solution in search of a problem. I mean, if the building hasn't been used for all these years as a doctor's office, why can't you just sell the building and locate a practice somewhere else? Because we have all kinds of empty spaces on 3rd Avenue and 5th Avenue. It seems like there's many other areas where she could open up her practice. So, I mean, I don't think this makes any sense for the community. The risk, of course, is that I understand it can build up to 55 feet in a R6 area. That would be a 6-story building. And to say that there's no risk that would happen, I mean, we have the Salvation Army plot, we have a plot next to it that they own. Those two plots combined could certainly facilitate a large project. It just doesn't make any sense to me. And regarding the fact that the building's been owned since 2010 or 11, I forget the time period. I mean, property values have only gone up since then. So if the doctor sold the property, I don't think she would lose any money on it. Yeah, I live across the street on the 229 86th Street. We have lots of doctors and offices and other medical facilities and schools and everything else on the block. And they all seem to operate within the zoning laws. So I don't really see any reason for the board to approve this. And I would support what Dean and the other members and Ann said as well. I know we've gotten assurances from both the doctor and from the architects and the other professionals that first of all, nothing's going to be done with this particular site, and I believe that, but you're opening up a Pandora's box here by approving this, and I would be against this. And basically, that's all I have to say. Thank you. Any questions for me?
Well, I just wanted to say thank you for the comment, but just for the record, the site with the Salvation Army would only be 50% within the rezoning area, so they really wouldn't benefit from a tremendous amount of floor area. They can already, as a community facility, build to a 1 FAR. They would have marginally more than that from the portion that was remaining, and they would be able to build on that portion. But anyway, we understand the comment. Thank you.
No, I'm just a little confused. Are you saying about the Salvation Army building? If they were to sell and become a residential building,
Right.
they would be able to build 6 stories.
Well, so first of all, the R6B generally caps you at 5 stories, but regardless.
In this zoning, we don't
Correct.
know about
Correct.
right.
So
Changes.
it's really just that they would be limited to that front portion. Because the zoning would not be applying to the entirety of the Salvation Army. So, whereas it's not really just a matter of the height, it's also a matter of whether they have the square footage to fill out that envelope. So they wouldn't, if you think about a full 50-foot tall building.
What if they combine with the lot east of it, the White House?
Then if it were rezoned.
There's always a possibility that they could add lots. I mean, that's just as a right.
And they own the lot next to it, don't they? Own the lot with the White House
They
on
do.
it.
They do on the lot.
Yes.
So they could combine those 2 lots and build a monstrosity.
They potentially, there's no bones about that. We just look at the city requirements in terms of the environmental review, and the city looks at the breadth of community facilities around the city, as well as whether or not those lots get redeveloped. And the EAS here supports the fact that community facilities that are built to this FAR would not redevelop. The churches, community facilities like nonprofits like the Salvation Army, this rezoning doesn't really support a rebuild of that site. Having said that, again, we get your point. We include other lots in the rezoning to make our land use rationale. Again, we're still hopeful that you can apply this zoning to Dr. Kim's lot, but we hear you. We get it.
Thank you.
Jeff Daly? Jeff?
Yes, thank you. I'm the owner of 234 86th Street, so just beyond the proposed zoning change by a couple of doors. And my question would be why you don't just provide an exception or a variance for Dr. Kim rather than changing most of the block.
Sure. Similar to Ann's question before, we wish that we could do that, but there's 2 reasons we can't. The first is that for a rezoning of this nature, you're required to include other lots in the rezoning in order to give it context. So somebody talked about spot zoning to just rezone her lot. We can't go into city planning with that rezoning. Again, we've been to rezonings, we've done rezonings in Brooklyn where that condition has been imposed on us, where somebody has taken our lot and removed the remaining lots and said, we're going to rezone you. That's typically done at the council, but we can't go into city planning with that application. With regards to a variance application, I'll tell you that our firm has done over 800 applications at BSA. I personally have done over 150. If we could be at BSA for this application, we would be. But the problem, of course, is that it's not that there's no other use for the property. It's that to use the property for doctor's offices, as is requested by Dr. Kim, would give rise to this. So again, yes, there are as of right uses for the property. You're able to use it for residential. It was an existing residential building and still has that capacity. The issue, of course, is that Dr. Kim, again, after purchasing the property in 2011, it became apparent that she couldn't make the changes to allow for her medical practice to be there. So that's the whole application.
Okay, thank you. I'm not a council member, so I don't have any vote in the process. I personally don't see any problem with this on the block. I think having another physician on the block would not be a bad thing. My other concern would be for parking, which has not been exacerbated so much by the medical offices, but by the schools. There are 5 schools right on that corner. So that's something else to be considered.
Thank you, Jeff.
Yeah, if I could just chime in on that, parking is a nightmare on the block. Double parking, parking in driveways, it's just completely out of control. So that is an issue that should be considered.
No, any other questions?
We have a question in the room.
Yes.
You said that we own 266 86th Street, the building next to the white building. So we would be directly affected by any changes that would take place on the Salvation Army property. Now, we're well aware that Salvation Army is not doing very well. We speak to them we're on friendly terms with them. And this just opens an opportunity for expansion. It would be very simple for them to take both properties, build up 5 stories, use 87th Street as their parking lot. Then they would have available parking there. They would have the building, and it would basically kill our building because it would overpower us and block any existing light that we may be getting from there. Secondly, you said in your presentation that we're out of compliance, but in 1961, the zoning was made in special zoning to Bay Ridge, which it's not been a party for us because we've had higher taxes as a result. One of my fears is that changing the zones might change our tax base and make it even more expensive. But more importantly, you said we were out of compliance.
Correct.
But legally, we're not out of compliance because we're grandfathered in. So that's moved.
So
it doesn't change anything for us.
Right. So just to be clear on the definition. So non-compliance is legal non-compliance. It means that in 1961, the building was existing. The zoning was set down in December of 1961. And if that building's there, you've heard the term grandfathered, it's grandfathered. Right. So if you're in an R32 and you're a residential building, your legal floor area ratio is a 0.5. If similar to these 3 buildings, you've got existing floor area of 2.2, 2.5, you are a legal non-compliant building. So it's not that you are illegal or out of compliance. It's that you are a legal non-compliant building. You can continue to exist in perpetuity, right, but just the term under the zoning, you're non-compliant.
And so there would be no need to change the zoning for our behalf.
Well, the difference being that if you did have an R6B, then your square footage now from a legal standpoint for a building, call it a residential building without any affordability, you have a legal floor area ratio of 2. So really what happens? A, you are closer to being a complying building, which is neither here nor there. B, to the extent that, for example, under the zoning resolution, something happened to the building to greater than 75% of the floor area that prevented you from rebuilding in accordance with the zoning resolution, you would now be able to build to a legal floor area ratio of a 2. So it's better for the site.
Right, and but in addition, you would be able to build to a legal floor ratio of 2 with an addition of 2 additional floors.
Well, for example, how big's a lot?
Our 8 by 22, I think.
So you got 60 by 22 floor plate with a 20-foot rear yard, 1,200 square feet. You have a legal floor area of 3,200 square feet. You're going to build to 3 stories. It's like, it's not merely a function of all of a sudden you can go up necessarily to 5 stories. It's whether or not you have the square footage to fill that out. And as with other properties, you're capped at how much floor area you have for that envelope.
Okay, and then the other thing was, you mentioned that this building would have to contain a side yard of 8 feet. But it's an existing property that has no side yard.
Correct.
It has a front offset of 8 feet or 12 feet.
Correct. To the extent that it's stayed as a residential property, legal, non-complying, much like your square footage, legal, non-complying side yards. To the extent they want to locate a doctor's office on the ground floor, those side yards are no longer legal, non-complying. They would have to alter those side yards to provide 8-foot side yards.
But there are no side yards. There's
Correct.
no room for side yards.
Absolutely.
So that's that, then you're saying that the building would have to be taken down and rebuilt to 8 feet narrower?
They would have to take out 8 feet of side yard, correct? That's why she can't, that's why she's here. That's why she's here.
Okay, and that's all part of the zone that exists right
Correct.
now, and
Yes.
you purchased in that zone, correct? So where are we?
Right. I think, sadly, they got a lot of
It's
bad
100
advice.
feet, our street is 100 feet wide.
Right.
Maybe we want an airport there, an airstrip.
Okay, well,
I mean, really.
thank you for your questions. Does the committee have any other comments or questions?
We could close it and have committee. I mean, everyone's welcome to stay. Our meetings are open.
Can I ask one question about the tax base? Are there any changes to taxation with this change of zone? Can you give me a qualified answer?
Yeah, I mean, we're happy to have a tax attorney come and give you an opinion, but there aren't. Unless you rebuild.
Although all are welcome to stay, we could, Anne, is your hand up
Yeah,
again?
Stephanie, there was an email this afternoon from a resident that had some, I thought,
Yes.
really, really good questions in it. And I wonder if we could look at that email and see if,
Sure.
yeah.
Sure. I do have that. Okay, so let's see. This building, as well as other buildings between that location and PS 185, currently house medical and dental offices already. I think, Rich, we spoke to this one. Why is the change in zoning needed if the building is not expanding and will just be using the existing space?
Yeah, just to talk about for 1 second, because Dr. Kim noted this. There's other properties that have doctor's offices on this block. And there are properties where the doctor's office was located there since 1961, or at any time where a zoning change would have permitted it. And they've got a certificate of occupancy that says that they can continue to operate there. There's properties like Dr. Kim's, which are residential. And to the extent that a doctor's office locates there, some of those would be illegal. If they locate there and Department of Buildings, nobody calls it a violation, they basically just continue operating and they're illegal. So it's like, again, the opportunity here was to try to create a legal condition and not to take advantage of the zoning.
So I'm just talking out loud a little bit, because you had mentioned the community facility text amendment. And so it's a problem that you've identified very specific to the community facility. And we're going to be going through a very broad rezoning. I mean, maybe that's something, that should have been addressed or could be addressed.
Yeah, the problem is that that text amendment applies citywide. So you have to run it through 51 community, or the number of 51 districts. It's the environmental impacts of that they multiply to all the different districts, and so.
No, I'm saying, there are changes that are included in housing opportunity.
It's not.
The community facility.
Correct.
Okay. The next question was, why does the proposed zoning change go further 4 lots than the applicant's building towards Ridge Boulevard? I think Richard had explained that.
Yeah.
Additionally, the zoning change would also affect the lots between the property towards Third Avenue. I'm guessing that the zoning change must be contiguous, but it seems that many properties are affected by a request by one property owner. Generally, this is very concerning, especially considering some significant zoning and land use questions that will be before this board in the coming months and year that have the potential to change the livability of the neighborhood and not in a positive way. So that's the email that we received earlier.
Sure.
Okay.
We will continue as a committee to discuss the issue, and you are welcome to stay, of course, but I'd like to thank you very much for your presentation, Richard, and Dr. Kim, thank you for being here as well. We appreciate your information. Thank you.
Sure.
And committee, if you can stay, please. And then-
We can stay.
Mhm.
We can stay. We can, want to sit down and just listen.
Right.
Right. Cool.
Good night, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Hey, Winnie, thank you for being there. So discussion, and I think we most likely will have to make a recommendation and a motion. Have any?
So procedurally, we have to vote on this by the May meeting.
Okay, which is May 20th. Would anyone like to craft a motion or?
We have two hands.
Okay, so
Doris.
Doris,
So
I make a
moved.
motion to oppose the proposal.
Second.
what, I also saw Ibrahim,
Ibrahim?
did he have his hand up?
Yeah, it was a question before the motion. Because this zoning will affect other homes. Are the owners of these houses have been notified or not?
Yes.
Okay, so they are aware of the changes, right?
Yeah, many are on the call. We did hear from 3 other homeowners before the meeting started who expressed concerns. They said they would be watching, wouldn't be able to attend the meeting, but we did, Richard Lobel, we asked his office to do a certain, I think it was 200 feet, but the board office did a perimeter of 4 blocks. The 4-block perimeter notification.
Okay.
So we have a motion as to oppose, and I had a second from
Steve.
Oh, it was Steve. Okay. Any discussion? Do we want this to just read as to oppose, or any modifications or recommendations or explanations?
No. Can you hear me? Is Dean?
Yes,
Yes.
Steve?
Okay, yeah, because I lost my screen. Yeah, I mean, we could say whatever we want, but basically we should just oppose this. I mean, if we want to put in a whole list of things, that's fine. But you know, I think just opposing it is fine. I don't think they can make it. You know,
This is Carmelo. I think they heard us.
Okay. Okay, I'm just gonna call the question. Good. Then all in favor?
Aye.
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 Abraham?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, then the motion carries. Thank you all very much.
You carry unanimously?
Was that-
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you.
There's nothing else on the agenda? No. There is nothing else on the agenda, but we do have a meeting on Monday, May 6th. Come in, thank you all.
Zoning.
To discuss the City of Yes Housing Opportunities, a working group meeting, and it will begin at 6 p.m.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for the reminder of 6.
Okay, wait, Josephine is confirming, but I thought it was at 6 p.m.
No, if you send it-
Remind me the day? What day?
Yes,
Monday.
Monday, May
Monday.
6th.
May 6th,
Yes.
okay.
And the meeting notice went out, so it should have been May 6 p.m.
Okay.
Okay. Well, then that's
Sometimes we
all
miss the
there is
details.
for this evening. So I hope you all have a wonderful evening and a wonderful weekend, and I will see you on Monday.
So
Thank
Monday,
you.
Thank you.
You too. Thank you.
And
Bye.
Josephine's confirming at 6 p.m. Monday, May 6th.
so that's gonna be a working group meeting,
Okay.
and that's the working group?
Yes, that's the
Yeah, the
working
working
group.
group meeting for zoning and land use committee members.
Yes.
To kind of roll up our sleeves and open the binder of the new proposal, which is what we did for economic opportunity. And we are working on a public meeting date in early June to invite the Department of City Planning back again with the board and the community. So we'll keep you posted too. I should have more confirmations because we're looking for a venue by next week.
And so Monday's
Thank you.
meeting is, I believe you've all received that this is the first of 3 meetings. So there's
Yes.
3 working group meeting dates. So thank you in advance for your time. But
Okay.
all have a wonderful
Thank
weekend.
you.
Thank
Have
you,
a good one.
Stephanie.